Hi everyone, here's another question from the monthly questions thread. This one's from Roy. One thing I struggle with is POV. If I'm writing in third person past, say, is it okay to zoom in and out, i.e. get closer to one character for a beat or two, see their internal monologue before either zooming out or focusing on another character? When does it become head hopping? This is a really good question and one of those grey areas that I think it's easy to get lost in. I see this in editing all the time, and I think I'm personally pretty strict about picking it up because most of the time I do think it should be avoided. Other editors and other readers might disagree though. To me, internal monologue and narration should be closely linked. Not all narration is the direct thoughts of your character, obviously, but it should still all be framed through the experience of that character. For example, if your character is a teenage boy, you might not describe the sky as the shade of azure reserved for the gods themselves. You might say sky was like really, really blue. We should be seeing the world as they see it. The narration should be tinged with a part of who they are, I think. That means that among that, if we suddenly see the internal monologue of another character, it can feel out of place and can leave a reader feeling a little bit wrong-footed. However, like all things writing related, there aren't actual rules. There are writers who do move between internal monologues pretty frequently, and it works just fine for their style. I think it's easier to do if you never go too deeply into your character anyway, and you keep the narration more distant and neutral. That way, the reader probably won't feel as wrong-footed if you jump between them. I'm thinking about really plot-driven books for this. And if you need to do it, you can, I think, but therein lies the key, perhaps, if you need to do it. Breaking rules is fine, but I think it should be done purposefully and kept to a minimum. If something in your story hinges on us understanding what a character's thinking in a certain moment and they're not your POV character, it might be worth the risk of head hopping to them just for a moment. If, however, it's not essential and there isn't a significant gain, I would say avoid it where possible, or I'd switch POV entirely, even for a paragraph with, line breaks before swapping back, just to make that solid distinction. There's nothing to say that you can't do that and then you have the full depth of each character's mind. Another approach, and the one I favour myself, is to present the information as a very educated guess from the POV character about the other character, instead of pushing directly into their internal monologue. I tend to talk about what my character can read in their face or their gestures, and I'll go into a pretty heavy assumption about it that for all intents and purposes does the job most of the time. Something else I think is important to remember here is that we writers often spend quite a lot of time thinking about this kind of thing and debating its correct usage because this is our passion and our craft, but the average reader might gloss over it without really thinking twice. If you can make it smooth so it doesn't get in the reader's way and it doesn't trip them up too much, I think there's a good chance they'll just read it and take on the information without thinking too much about the mechanics of the delivery. I suppose it's all in the story, really. If it doesn't adversely affect the reader's experience and it will benefit the story, I'd say try it. Apologies that I can't be more specific because every story is different, of course, but if I was thinking about your novel, Roy, and if you're writing the sequel perhaps, I'd say you have the opportunity in your style to expand the POV a little bit in meaningful moments and get away with it if it really matters. I think you've got the writing skill to minimise that impact. So if you need to do it, I'd say give it a shot. It's something I would always call out in an edit, but I'd also be quite happy to be overruled on if the rationale's there, which comes from the story, I suppose. So thanks again for your question and for your support here on Patreon.